Hey guys, welcome back to Annie Narrates. Today's story's title goes like this. Entitled sister demanded that I give up my room for her friends to stay for her wedding. I declined, and so she accused me of quote-unquote sabotaging her wedding because I'm jealous and my parents take her side and want me to apologize, or they'll cut me off forever. An 18 female live with my parents since I'm not going to college and have started working already. I'm taking a gap year, saving some money for myself so I can contribute to my expenses myself and won't have to depend entirely on my parents next year when I finally do go to college. Our house has 4 rooms. My parents stay in the master bedroom. I have my own room. My sister used to have her own room until she moved out a couple of years ago. And then there's the guest room. My sister, 22 female, is getting married in a couple of weeks and has moved back here for a while because she wants to get married in her hometown. She went to college out of state, so her fiance and most of her friends are not from around here. So she wants me to give up my room so they can come and live with us. Her fiance is supposed to fly down here in 1 week, but her friends are going to arrive the week after that. She has been here for several months already, but has never brought this up before a couple of days ago. She said that she is going to be living in her own room. Her fiance is going to take over the guest bedroom, and so she wants me to give up my room and move in with my grandparents until she's married so her friends can live in my room. She told us that she even wanted to ask her fiance's parents to live with us so they wouldn't have to take a room in a hotel, but it wouldn't be possible since our house didn't have enough rooms. She brought this up at dinner a couple of days ago, and my parents didn't seem to have any problem with it, but I did. I told her that I could not move out of the house and go live with our grandparents just because she wanted her friends to stay with her before the wedding. For context, our grandparents live really far away in the suburbs, and I can't exactly travel back and forth every day. The commute from my grandparents' place to my workplace itself would end up taking half of my day. And that would put my job situation at risk because I had to go to work. So I told her that I wasn't going to move out, and it was too bad, but she would just have to ask her friends to stay in a hotel. She then suggested that I live with a friend until the wedding, but most of my friends had moved out for college, and it would just be plain weird for me to go live in their houses while they were not there, so that was a no-go for me as well. My parents then suggested that I could stay in a hotel and let her friends live with her here in the house, and they even offered to pay for it. But I declined because I didn't want to spend the next couple of weeks in a hotel room and give up my room to a bunch of strangers. Besides, moving out right now would be a real pain because there was a lot of stuff that was absolutely necessary for me and I couldn't leave it behind. It was just a lot of work, and I personally didn't understand how it made any sense for me to leave my room and vacate my house to go live in a hotel, just so her friends wouldn't have to. So I told my sister and my parents that I wouldn't be moving out, and it was final, which led to a really big argument that day after dinner. When I told them that I wasn't willing to move out and give up my room, my sister flipped out at me and started calling me awful names. She accused me of being jealous of her and said that I was trying to sabotage her wedding on purpose. She claimed that she had noticed the way that I had been so gloomy ever since she came back here, and she could tell it was because I was insecure and felt threatened by her presence. Apparently, she had also already promised her friends that they wouldn't have to live in a hotel and she would arrange accommodation for them. And me refusing to give up my room would mean that she would have to go back on her word, and it would be really embarrassing for her, which is probably why I was doing it. I didn't even know about her promise until she told me herself, so there was no way that I could have done this on purpose. When I pointed that out, she started crying and stormed off and locked herself in her room, but still continued sobbing loud enough for us to be able to hear her. And then, my parents told me that they were really disappointed in the way that I was acting. I couldn't for the life of me understand why they were disappointed in me for acting like a total normal, rational, and sane person, rather than being disappointed in their eldest daughter who was acting like a toddler and throwing a tantrum over something that was her own fault. I strongly feel that before making that promise to her friends, she should have at least consulted with me and asked me if I would be willing to give up my room to accommodate them. But she made a promise without asking me, and now expects me to sacrifice my comfort so that she can have things her way. It seems unreasonable, unfair, and downright entitled to her to make such demands from me just because her wedding is coming up in a couple of weeks. I told my parents that I respected and understood the fact that she was the bride-to-be, and this was a really significant event for our family. But that doesn't mean that she gets to push me around and make me do whatever she wants me to do. They told me that they could understand where I was coming from, and this would be inconvenient for me, but I needed to realize that my sister was counting on me, and I shouldn't let her down, especially not when it comes to something like this. Her wedding is obviously very important to her, and I need to accommodate her just this once. I was getting very frustrated with that conversation because I just didn't understand what the big deal was. It felt like they were ready to bend over backward for my sister and expected me to do the same just because she was the bride. So I left the dinner table without saying anything else, and nobody spoke to each other until the next morning. My sister was out for the day, so it was just me and my parents at home. After a silent breakfast, they came to my room and told me that they had thought about this a lot, and if I continued to be selfish and didn't give up my room for my sister's friends, then they would be forced to cut me off. They said that this wedding was a big deal for the family, and they would be forced to cut me off. And it would reflect badly on us if my sister wasn't able to live up to her promise. So not just she, but everybody was counting on me to be a little less selfish. And if I couldn't even bring myself to do that, then they were not sure of who they had raised, and they would prefer it if I left the house altogether. They told me that in this house, they believed that we thought about each other before making decisions, and if I was too arrogant and selfish to do that, then there was no place for me in this household, and they would prefer it if I left. They told me I had a couple of days to think about it, but after that, I would have to let them know about my decision. Then they left, and I was left alone in my room. It has been a few days since then, and I haven't spoken to anybody in my house. Not my parents, and definitely not my sister. I honestly don't know what to make of the situation right now, because I feel like they're being incredibly unfair to me. They claim that in this house we think about each other before making decisions, but my sister didn't do that. So why do they expect me to do it? And to say that they are going to cut me out of their lives just because I don't want to give up my room for a couple of people that I don't even know, to live up to a promise that I didn't even make, seems like so much pressure that I shouldn't be taking on. None of this makes sense to me. Yesterday, my parents reminded me that I still had to tell them about my decision. Everybody in this house has been really cold to me and is ignoring me constantly. I have restricted myself to my room and have been crying myself to sleep after what my parents said the other day, because that did a number on me. I have honestly started to doubt myself right now, and that's why I'm posting here. Am I the a-hole for not giving up my room for my sister's friends who are flying down here for her wedding? Hi everyone. Thank you so much for all the comments and the outpouring of support that I have seen in the past 3 days. It's kind of overwhelming for me, but it just made me feel so much better about everything that was going on. It made me realize that my parents were never going to see my side of things, mostly because it didn't matter to them what I felt. You guys were all right about my sister being the golden child and everything. It's always been subtle, but it's always been there. As a kid, I used to feel like I was just overthinking things and making it all up in my head, and tried really hard to believe that our parents loved us both equally, but now I can see clear as day that that's not true. Right from our childhood, the two of us had been competing against each other for our parents' affection, but they always leaned more towards my sister rather than me, while maintaining that they loved us both equally. Her achievements were always celebrated in a bigger way than mine, and my failures were always highlighted more than hers. I guess that should have been enough of a hint for me to realize that my parents didn't really mean it when they said that we were equals, but I was desperate to believe that we were, so I ignored all of it. However, now there is no ignoring it anymore, and I had to come to terms with the truth. Yesterday, I finally packed my stuff up and said goodbye to my family because I was going to move in with a coworker of mine. His apartment is close to our workplace, and he told me a couple of weeks ago that he was looking for a roommate to split the rent with. Both of us work in the social media marketing department, and we've been close friends for quite a while now. When I told him about the situation with my family the day of our big fight, he offered to let me stay with him, but I turned it down because he was a guy and I didn't want things to become awkward. Unfortunately, now I was left with no choice but to accept. And honestly, my only issue with that arrangement, and I didn't want things to become awkward for us at work if we started living together. It could blow up and become a whole thing, and then HR would have to get involved in stuff. Would just be a lot of hassle. But he told me that I was just overthinking things and it would be alright, and I believed him. So I spoke to him, and after we discussed everything, I moved out yesterday. My parents and sister had been chatting in the living room when my friend and I started taking all my stuff out, and they watched us quietly but didn't ask any questions and didn't say anything. When we were finally done after almost an hour, I told them to wait outside while I spoke to my family and said goodbye to them one last time. All eyes were already on me when I took center stage in the living room, and I started off on my speech that I had been preparing ever since I decided that I was going to move in with my friend. It was kind of dramatic of me, but I feel like I had to do it to let them know that they had really let me down. And I have always been one for theatrics, so if I was going to get kicked out of my house, then I might as well get something out of it. Even if it was just a cool story about how I shut my parents up with my speech. I thank my parents for everything that they had done for me over the last 18 years, and also thank my sister for being tolerable at best. They were not the best, but they were not straight out of a nightmare either, like some other sibling stories on the sub. I told them that I had thought about it long and hard, and I didn't see any way that I could continue living in my parents' house. Not after the way that they had threatened to kick me out just because my sister wanted to give up my room. Not only did that make me realize how biased my parents are, but it also made me open my eyes to how unfairly I'm being treated here, and how that's been going on for years. They were very clever about it, and I never really caught on, but there was no denying it anymore, and they couldn't manipulate me into believing my sister and I were going to be treated like equals. That was definitely not going to happen, in this lifetime at the very least. And now that I knew it, I felt like it was time to leave before they threatened to kick me out again. And then I left, without waiting for them to say anything. Nobody came after me to stop me or whatever, and soon enough, I was in my friend's car and we were driving to his place with all my things. It felt a little weird, but I also felt really relieved and free, now that I didn't have my parents constantly breathing down my neck. My sister did try calling me a couple of hours after I left, but when I didn't answer, she didn't try anymore. I figured that whatever she wanted to tell me on the phone call, she could tell me by text as well, and I really wasn't in the mood to talk to her on the phone and waste my time. It's been quite a while, a day almost, and nobody has tried to reach out to me yet. So I guess that's it for now. They are probably relieved to have me out of their hair as well, but it's okay. I'm happy to live with my friend for as long as I need to, and from the looks of it, he is pretty happy to have me here as well. We didn't have work today and spent the entire day just talking. And then we grabbed dinner and drinks at the nearby bar to celebrate my moving in with him. So far, so good. Hi everyone, it's been a week since I moved in with my friend, and it's been going pretty well. He and I get along, and after moving in, we discovered that we have a lot of common interests. And I feel like we're pretty much the same people. So it's been great living with him. It's not that great for my sister, unfortunately, because her fiance has been fighting with her. And the reason they're fighting is because of me, from what my parents told me a few days ago. Apparently, her fiance had told her that he was bringing gifts for the entire family a couple of days ago, and he asked her to tell him some more about me, so he could buy something for me as well. This was the first time that he was coming to meet us as her fiance and not just as a boyfriend, so he wanted to make a pretty big deal out of it. But my sister, being the idiot that she is, told him that our parents had kicked me out of the house, and she told him the real story of what happened. She didn't even bother to tweak it to make herself look like a better person, because in her head, she thought that she was in the right and I was entitled. But of course, her fiance is a normal human being, and he didn't see things the same way. So he got mad at her and told her that she was the one who was entitled and she owed me an apology. And that's how they started fighting. They still did come here, but they haven't been happy and have been fighting constantly. Because my sister thinks that whatever she did was completely fine, and the way my parents behaved was also okay, but her fiance doesn't agree with her. He, like any other normal person, believes that we need to sort our differences as a family, and while I think that's sweet, I don't think I can do that. Because when my parents called me to inform me about this a couple of days ago, they very specifically told me that they wanted me to come back home, not because they felt sorry or felt bad about what happened, but because they didn't want my sister to be fighting with her fiance with just a couple of weeks to go before the wedding. They said that I could come back home and live with them until the wedding, and then I could go back out on my own, as if this was supposed to be a favor to me. I obviously declined, and I told them that I already had a place to live, and now that I was living with my friends, I didn't need to count on them. It was sad that my sister and her fiance were fighting just before the wedding, but it really wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with this. It's not like I went to her fiance and complained to him about what was happening. He heard the story right from my sister, and he got mad like any other person would, because my sister was in the wrong. I told my parents that I wasn't coming back, and then I didn't talk to them anymore. But they kept texting me and told me that their fighting was just getting worse, and I needed to come back home and at least try to make things right between them. I don't think that they realized that my coming back and speaking to her fiance was not going to make things any better. It was my sister who needed to acknowledge that she messed up. I'm pretty sure that the fight isn't even about me in the first place. It's about my sister and her behavior, and that's what her fiance is mad about. He barely even knows me. I'm sure that he's not fighting on my behalf, and my parents don't even realize that. They think that if I come back home and talk to her fiance, tell him that everything is alright, then things will just magically be fine once more, and they will get married without a hitch. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Now that her fiance has seen this side of hers, I am not sure he can just go back to thinking that she's a flawless person. And me coming back home will definitely not fix that. What she needs to do is talk to him, acknowledge that she made a mistake, and then talk to me. And that might help them. Again, that is just my theory, and it might not work, but it's probably more reasonable than whatever my parents think would work. Okay, so I have a huge update. As a lot of you might have guessed, since this update is coming just a couple of days after my last one, I have bad news about the wedding. It's not happening anymore. The wedding got called off. My parents and I didn't talk for the last couple of days, and last morning, I received several texts from my friends and a couple of my cousins asking me why my sister wasn't getting married anymore. I don't follow her on social media, but she hasn't blocked me, and it was a public post. So when I went onto her account, I saw that she had made a post along with her fiance, saying that they had mutually agreed that this was not the right time for them to get married anymore, and they wanted us to respect that privacy at this difficult time, since it was very hard for them to part ways with just a couple of weeks to go for the wedding. But it had to be done. I was shocked because this was huge, and I wasn't expecting them to actually break up over that fight, and I never imagined that it would blow up out of proportion this way. I felt bad for her, obviously, and I considered reaching out to her, but before I could do that, my parents called me up and delivered the news to me themselves. I don't know what they wanted me to say, so I just stayed silent, and then they told me that they knew that this is what I wanted all along. It was an absurd allegation, but I expected nothing better from my parents. They went on to tell me that the fight had started with an argument about what my sister should say to me to make me come back, but my sister wasn't on board with the idea of apologizing to me, and that's what escalated their fight. They had a lot of personal problems as well, even apart from that whole argument about my situation, but my parents didn't think that that was the reason they broke up. They think that if I'd come back like they'd asked me to, then things would have calmed down, and they would have gotten married and lived happily ever after. I don't even understand why they think that would have worked, but I know that they needed a scapegoat, and unfortunately, I am that person, because they know that they can just blame me without any consequences. I had tried to be civil as humanly possible in my earlier arguments with them, but this time, I just couldn't hold back and I lost my temper at them. I yelled at them and told them that they could keep blaming me for everything that went wrong in their life, but ultimately it was their own fault. They were the ones who always screwed up, so they needed to step up and accept it, instead of looking for people to blame all the time. Things got a little heated, and my parents ended up telling me that they had made a lot of mistakes in their lifetime, but their biggest mistake would always be me. And then they disconnected the call and blocked me. That really hurt, and I decided that I was never going to get back in touch with them anymore. It was hard to hear my own parents say something as cruel as that, but I didn't allow myself to break down until I was alone at night. My friend and roommate knew that there was something off, but he just said a few words of consolation and didn't force me to tell him what was going on. which I appreciate because I need some time to myself to process everything before I can talk about this to other people. I'm just honestly glad that I have him and a couple of other people who I can always rely on. They're all the family that I need. Hi everybody, long time no see. I can't believe I'm back here after almost 2 years. I just randomly thought of this account a couple of days ago, and I had to do a lot of digging to find out how to log in here. I had forgotten the password, but somehow I managed. So a lot has changed since my last update here, and I'm happy to say that it's for the better. My family and I are still not on speaking terms, and I have no idea about what they're up to. The last I heard, my sister was still living with my parents, and she had moved here permanently. That was a few months ago, but I don't know what they're up to and neither do I care. But I recently got engaged just a week ago, and there are no prizes for guessing who it is that I'm engaged to. A lot of you guys called it, and it's true. I sort of started dating my roommate, coworker, and friend a couple of months after we had moved in together. It just happened really organically, and we fell in love before we even knew it. He proposed to me last week and went from being my coworker to my friend to my roommate to my boyfriend, and now my fiance. In a couple of months, he's going to be my husband. It feels crazy to even say that, but it's happening, and I am so grateful for it. Like I said, he's all the family that I need. Alright guys, that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me, and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.